Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the second day of the India Maritime Virtual Conference. We begin today's session with the most important and relevant topic for our times, developing best-in-class port infrastructure. We have an eminent panel to discuss this, to include Mr. Koen Corneli, Manager Port Projects, Port of Antwerp International, Mr. Avinash Rai, CEO Adani Krishnapatnam Port, Mr. Vineet Kumar, Chairman Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Port, Calcutta, Mr. Suresh Amirapu, Advisor PSA India Limited. The moderator for the session is Mr. Raj Khalid, India Representative for Antwerp Authority and India Representative for APEC and PI. Welcome to the session and over to you, Mr. Raj Khalid.
Yes, good morning. Thank you all first to Informa for arranging this conference, to our panelists and to the audience who joined us. I'd like to make a small correction. I am no longer the India rep for Port Authority of Antwerp. There is somebody else. I am only with PI and APEC. Just to make that record straight, Daljit Singh actually is the new rep.
Okay.
There are some small changes since Chairman Mumbai Port Trust is unable to join due to illness. We had a late request to Captain Amirapu to speak, and due to a prior commitment, he has asked to be allowed first, which I am going to do. I would like to set a few points right at the start. I will request all the speakers to briefly introduce themselves. I would further ask the speakers to restrict their submissions to about 8 minutes maximum, so that there is some time for interaction amongst ourselves and for the audience to ask question and answers. I wish you all an interesting session. And with that, I will ask Captain Suresh Amirapu to begin his presentation. Suresh, over to you.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Raj. At the outset, let me thank the organizers, Informa, and Padmaji and her whole team for this opportunity. As Raj mentioned, I am a late entrant, and also I have to mention that I do have another pre-arranged appointment, so I will not be staying for the entire session, but I'll exit a little later. So I thank Raj for giving me the opportunity to speak first. Okay. First and foremost, good morning and greetings to everyone who has participated. The fact that you're joining this particular session itself is a testimony to the importance that the port sector has, and believe me, we could always do with more engagement. As you know, this is an out-of-sight industry. It's not too well known in the public eye, and a lot of good that we do, doesn't get really the publicity that we deserve. So it's always very nice when all of you are coming and participate and listen to what we have to say. And of course, a very special welcome from my side as well to the eminent panelists, Mr. Vineet Kumarji, Chairman of the Shyama Prasad Mukherjee Port, Calcutta, Mr. Koen Corneli from the Port of Antwerp, old friend of India, Mr. Avinash Rai from the Adani Port Group, which is becoming one of the biggest port groups, at least in the region. And so it's always nice to see your presence here, sir. And of course, to Raj for giving me this opportunity and also for participating. I think my presence here is actually an acknowledgement that the private terminal operators and in turn their investors have made and continue to make to the Indian port scene. According to a report by Brief, which is in turn was based in PPP India, private port operators have led to a number of very good measures as far as the industry is concerned. This includes, of course, an increase in the capacity of ports, which is absolutely necessary. They have brought in best in industry practices, and those in turn have helped in increasing the efficiency of these ports. Productivity enhancement, increased competition, brought in new technologies, not to mention, of course, infusion of fresh equity funding. And all these are in a sector which has its own characteristics. Like any other infrastructure projects, of course, ports involve very high capex, upfront funding, long gestation period. And of course, these are have to be long-term projects, and most of the PPP projects that we are in India are ranging at least from a minimum of 30 years, and some go all the way up to 50 years as well. 6 years ago, that is in December 2016, it was mentioned that there were about 122 projects, which at that time had brought in about 1,34,844 crores of investment. This is the private sector, of course. And these covered the 12 major ports, and out of non-major ports, there are about 60 or so operational ports in India right now. So that's the kind of landscape we're looking at. I'm going to focus a little bit more on the major ports because Mr. Rai's presence here, I can't think of anybody else who can talk about the non-major ports where his group is very heavily invested. Now, the engagement models of these mostly have been the BOT model, or some variation of it thereof. So how has this sector done so far, and what is it that we must do in future? I think one lesson that really came very sharply through during the COVID was that the port sector was asked to step up, and it did it admirably. It was declared an essential sector during the pandemic. It is to the credit of all Indian ports that there was no delay. Despite all the challenges that the COVID pandemic threw up, our staff and drivers went away to their hometowns. So there was a shortage of staff. Then there was, of course, movement. There was no public transportation available. Despite all these, I think the port trust made it. And I can't think of a single day when the ports actually came to a halt during the entire pandemic. And that's number one. Number two is that the ports also did one more thing, and that is they completely aligned themselves with the government of India's policies and initiatives that were taken at that time, which was to give Indian exporters some concessions by way of, reduction of ground rent charges or demurrage, detention. So all these things were very well done by the port sector, which they continue to do. And it is, I think, therefore, interesting to understand that this is the port sector itself, of course, everybody knows, lies at the sea-land interface of the entire logistics chain. And what is interesting is that the sheer merchandise exports in the country have gone up despite the pandemic. India has done very well in that area. And India is also becoming, with this year, the leading agri-products exporter of the world. And all this has to be made possible through the ports, through the various ports of India. And in turn, that's where the role of the port operator comes in. It is very also heartening to understand that at a time when most of the ports all over the world are reporting very high congestions, okay? And according to some studies, some 304 ships are now waiting for berths at various locations. And some figures put that even higher. At that time, none of the Indian ports are really facing that kind of congestion. So I think in comparison to both national benchmarks as well as international benchmarks, the Indian port sector itself has done well. It therefore deserves, in my opinion, a closer look at how some reforms can come into this sector, which would only help both the nation, okay, the sector itself, and more important, the ones whom we serve, which is at the end of the day, the Indian exporter and importer. And if these are to get the benefit of these maximum reforms, then we must have at least certain minimum measures to be brought in. One is there must be greater flexibility in the regulatory environment, because this will actually continue to be a key determinant of success in this country. The port projects that we have, as I mentioned, some of them are 30 years, some of them are 50 years. We must have a mechanism of periodical monitoring, because much happens within these 30 years. Original assumptions change, the laws change, the market conditions change, and there has to be some flexibility whereby we can have a periodical monitoring of this, at least once in every 4 or 5 years. and with a mechanism to make the necessary changes. Then for the same reason, there has to be a flexibility in the MGT norms. Now, we have to understand, of course, that when we go into a port project, and that to mind, we're literally crystal grazing for the next 30 years. We do have certain obligations, including those of the MGT, which are based again on certain assumptions. But if those assumptions change, and mostly because the ground realities change, then there has to be that degree of flexibility. Otherwise, what happens, we get into a situation where the concessioning authority says, no, this is what you committed when you signed up 30 years ago, here's a copy of the concession agreements, now you have to do this, which is, and I would like to highlight that these are genuine problems. These are not created due to negligence or failure to perform. Then we have to streamline the risk-sharing arrangement pattern, which exists between the concessioning authority and the concessionaire. And last but not least, we must have effective grievance mechanism. And more importantly is, finally, these things must actually perform. They must actually happen on the ground. We are seeing this happening in some ports, which is very encouraging, but it must happen right across. If these things get in, I'm absolutely certain this sector will not only bring in more investments in attraction, but it will expand to a level that it will serve this country, which is now actually on the threshold of becoming a major merchandise exporter. One point, of course, which we have to bring in is tax reforms. I think the tax structure, although to be fair, the government, there are a number of concessions which are accorded to the port sector. But given, as I mentioned, the circumstances under which we operate, I think there's a very genuine case for enhancing those tax reforms. One of the things the organizers briefly asked me to talk about was on the landlord model of the port infrastructure. My personal opinion is that India is very well geared up. We are now in a position where we can go full hog into the landlord model. This is, of course, very different from what the situation was, say, just after independence, where for very large infrastructure projects, we required much more commitment from the government. But now this industry has grown. And as I mentioned, that the investment in the PPP area has come up. And according to the latest figures from PPP, as of this year, there is a further 39 projects in the pipeline in the port sector, with an investment of about 60,000 crores. In fact, it's very safe to enhance that figure, because between what is the estimated project cost when a project starts till the actual project cost when the project ends, there is a big delta on that. So it's quite safe to say that the actual investment is in fact far more than that. The group that I work for, we alone have committed to more than $2 billion in the four ports that we are working in today. One thought, I'm of course conscious that Raj has put the clock on us. So let me wind up with these few thoughts quickly. One very important point that I need to highlight is that we in India, in the port sector, have duality, because the ports in India are in the concurrent list of the Indian Constitution. So we have a separate administration for the major ports and a separate administration for the non-major ports. And I think, number one, of course, we have to come into a level playing field in terms of, some of the restrictions, regulatory regimes that have taken place in the major ports. I think to the credit of the government, they've understood this, and we are now beginning to see some reforms. However, these reforms that we are now talking about must be also available to existing players. What really is happening is that the existing projects do not get the benefit of the reforms, but to derive the maximum benefit, I think we have to come up with the mechanism by which even the existing projects get the benefit of reform. For example, I'm just to cite just a quick example is the flexibility of tariff being accorded as per the market conditions, which is now available under the new MCA and as per the new MPA. Okay, and one more point which I would like to actually bring up before I wind down, and that is in terms of making India a more attractive proposition as an investment destination in the port sector. to make sure that the country risk of India is reduced. I think one suggestion which we have been making to the government is to come up with a master plan. And that master plan would have to include, of course, all the major ports, almost most of them, they do have a master plan. If you go to their websites, you'll find master plans. So you have some idea of what projects they're looking at in future. But unless you have a similar thing for the non-major ports, and unless you have an all India grid, which tells you, only then that would substantially remove the risk of what the kind of competition you're going to get if you get into a port. Please remember, you're committing yourself for a 30-year period when you get in. And then, as I mentioned, so many other changes take place en route during the journey. And if you do not have that flexibility to shift or to alter course accordingly, then you do end up with a situation where your original business case does not hold good anymore. So those are the two suggestions that I really want to leave with. And the third one, of course, is that as far as port charges in India are concerned, I think we seriously need to do something about the vessel-related charges. In many of the major ports, these are very high, especially in comparison with our neighboring ports against neighboring region ports with whom we are in competition and from whom we want to wean away a lot of the transshipment cargo, which is now being held overseas, which is now going to the overseas ports. So with these few thoughts, let me just wind up here so that I fulfill Raj's brief of keeping the speakers keeping to their timeline. Thank you.
Thank you, Suresh. Thank you for your acceptance, particularly with a late invitation. We are grateful. And I understand that you have to leave us, but hopefully people can connect with you if they have any other queries or questions.
Yes, of course. Most welcome.
Okay. Thank you, Suresh. Thanks. See you. I would now like to mention that Sanjay Sethi, Chairman JNPT, who was to speak next, is also taken ill and he cannot speak. So his subject of developing world-class mega ports will also be touched upon briefly by Koen, who is the following speaker. But before I hand over to Koen, I just want to make two short points. Is that all of us should bear in mind that the country of India has got about a 7,000 kilometer coastline. But our total key length across all the ports may not even exceed 60 kilometers. If you take all our key lengths and line them up, probably just 60 kilometers. Belgium, on the other hand, has a coastline of just 100 kilometers or 150 kilometers. But the key length in Antwerp alone is 172 kilometers. Now that is a mega port. Antwerp also has the largest land area of any port in the world. So I think we need to think big if you're talking about world-class mega ports and world-class infrastructure. With that, I invite Koen to make his submissions and introduce himself briefly.
Thank you, Raj. And as you know or not know, we merged recently together with Port of Zeebrugge as well. So our key length even increased. So we are now the biggest port of Europe. Good morning, Koen Corneli here from Port of Antwerp International as well. And it's a little bit funny, maybe, Mr. Suresh, I worked for PSA as well. So before my, when I moved to Port of Antwerp International, Port of Antwerp and APEC, I worked 10 years for PSA, implementing terminal operating software worldwide. So, and my latest project was Bagrat Mumbai Container Terminal to do the implementation of the software and help the people by the go live of that terminal of PSA in Mumbai. Nowadays, responsible for the Indian subcontinent, for Port of Antwerp International APEC, and as well together with the people of GNPT, organizing trainings in the GNPT APEC training school at Mumbai Port, GNPT. So if we talk about world-class ports, port-led development, and so on, taking into account the big projects that are running in India as Sagarmala, the Maritime Indian Vision 2030, where some challenging KPIs are set for the upcoming years for the ports in India. Establishment of road rail linkages with port terminals, multimodal connectivity, logistic parks, warehousing, maritime zone services, port-based and coastal tourism and recreational activities. So I think we can talk about port modernization, port connectivity. If we talk about port modernization and operational efficiency, taking cost into account, port connectivity, optimizing logistics, port and industrial connectivity, community development. Let's talk about skill development and as well urbanization around big projects. If we take this into account and we look to the challenges ports worldwide has, a port platform should be a catalyst for sustainable growth. Taking the disruptive drivers into account, shifting economic powers, resource scarcity, demographic growth, climate change, and changing supply chain, we need to take trends into account as well. So sustainability, transition, technology, collaboration. The challenges that drive industries, logistic providers, governments, and ports towards a greater focus on sustainability, increased use of technology, and overall innovation. Very important as well, also collaboration is a key to overcome challenges. Benefit from alliances and learn from each other. So I think Mr. Suresh already pointed some very interesting points regarding the private sector and the authorities running the management in India. But for Port of Antwerp, and we work together with big ports worldwide, so collaboration is as well a very important point, and share the knowledge you can share with other ports, for example. So community building, one of the big keys, big important keys as well. If we look more, and Suresh also as well mentioned, if you look and you go more to a landlord model, as Port of Antwerp is a model like that, an operator, a regulator, a landlord, and a community builder. As an operator, for example, you can create added value for your clients by the services you provide. As a port regulator, you can create a balanced level playing field for all the actors involved, and it's public, private, and your own. And as a port landlord, make sure you have the best-in-class infrastructure tailored to the regional port systems, logistics hubs, with attractive right of use conditions. And as I mentioned already, as a community, you are in the best position to bring stakeholders together and align common interests. You can unlock hidden synergies between port users, the entire port ecosystem, and the global supply chain in areas such as data exchange, nautical innovations, by facilitating and supporting partnerships. Your ports as a catalyst for sustainable growth. As a port authority, you create a framework platform, efficient and effective links connected with the government, long-term sustainability, environment, safety and security, employment and growth. But you need to take into account the holistic point of view. It's not only your port, it's as well the foreland. The shipping lines, for example, are very important. Global connections, global attractiveness, and your clients. To port operations, we have a big responsibility in towards our stakeholders, towards our terminal operators, to create a vast throughput of goods export, to help them with effective space and to help the clients. And then as well at the hinterland logistic providers, hub function, interland connection as well for the whole community. So as a port, you need to have a specific function. And I think in India, there are still a lot of opportunities to become a world-class port, to become or to increase the efficiency of the portlet development. I think there are a couple of opportunities while traveling towards India, while traveling worldwide. Within our projects, we are helping or managing in Brazil, in Africa, in Oman. You see a lot of things. So that's, I think, some opportunities for the Indian local market is to create a circular economy from a holistic point of view, and a unique synergy between maritime logistics industry and the people around a port project. The things I saw sometimes while developing portlet or portlet industrialization is sometimes it's lacking with a well-defined go-to-market plan. I heard already a lot of people asking me, yeah, you need to invest in a specific project. And that's very interesting. But if you don't have a go-to-market plan, you cannot invite stakeholders, big companies to help you to create a successful plan around a port, around a chemical cluster, for example, in India. As well, skill development is also a very important point. If you want to grow, you need to do it with the resources. The resources can be as well people. So skill development is as well a very high priority on our agenda here in Port of Antwerp, Zeebrugge, to make people doing their things on a correct way, on an effective way, and on a cost-effective way. Looking into, and as Mr. Suresh as well told, we are working constantly on the reviewing of our concession management as a port operator, looking in how to manage and how to implement circular economy, how to attract new industries with the challenges we have towards transition, towards innovation, towards sustainability. So it's as well very important that, for example, the old Opel site we have here in the Port of Antwerp, it's a huge area whereby we are now implementing the next gen district, a very important project to attract startup companies, innovative companies, and companies who are working very hardly on the trends that we face worldwide. Sustainability, transition towards new energy, shifting to other modalities, and so on. So the next gen district is a play field, let's say, whereby we invite people to help us to cope the challenges we have in the Port of Antwerp. Another opportunity as well, Mr. Suresh, the contracts you signed, so it's a long-term development port. It's not a short-term development. Mostly it's a port environment is a rigid environment, so the long-term development is as well very important. And you can't do it alone. I always say it takes two to tango. So work with the community, work with the knowledge you can share together to make India one of the biggest players in the maritime world. And last but not least, one important thing is break down the silos around the port environments, talk to each other, work with each other, communicate, as well on an authority point of view, stakeholder point of view, community point of view, and the people who are working around and working in those port-related environments. So that was my part to this session. Raj, I think I was a little bit over the time, but
No, since you covered 2 sessions, you are well in time.
okay, thank you.
But thank
So
you.
if there are more questions, please do not hesitate, contact us, and we will be happy and yeah, to help you as well in some challenges you have.
Thank you, Koen. May I now please request Avinash Rai to introduce himself and make his submissions. Over to you, Avinash.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. It's a great pleasure to be here, seeing everyone and interacting with fellow colleagues from various places. Developing world-class infrastructure for us today in India is a given fact. And today, when we look at the development which has been happening in the country in the last decade, and the focus from the government in terms of Sagarmala and the focus in reducing the cost of doing business and the cost of logistics in the country, there has been significant progress, both major and minor ports. I heard Suresh saying concurrent list, where both central and state government have a role to play, and we see a huge amount of awareness and an effort on part of both of the governments in supporting the development of this infrastructure. What is key today in the development of this is utilization of all the various systems which exist in the country in the name of IceGate, PCS, all the PGAs. India needs to have its UPI moment, which has happened in finance in the logistics trade, which is where the new logistics portal, unified logistics portal, is going to play a great role in bringing frictionless entry and exit into the ports. It is unimaginable today the amount of time which the goods wait for the various processes to get completed. At every stage of handover, we see a waiting, and the biggest resource which is seen waiting is the cargo itself and the mechanism for its delivery, which is the trucker or the trucking community. Imagine the day when we are able to take a seamless delivery in and out of a port, and the capacity which gets freed in terms of trucking asset for the container or non-container. This is going to give a huge reduction in the cost for the logistics trade. India also needs to look at its own concept of a single truck trailer combination, where US has been running the chassis system, which has its advantage and disadvantage, where today with the driver constraint, every time a truck is waiting for a cargo duty to get completed, it's a resource which is being idled. When we look on the port side, the mechanization is one activity which needs to be looked at. Even today, whenever we see a photo of a logistics business, we see people carrying bags on the shoulder. This is one activity which across the country needs to be looked at. How do we mechanize this in terms of usage of electric power instead of human power? When we look at this activity, it has got two-pronged efficiency improvement in terms of effort, in terms of cost. And that's a huge driver for bringing efficiency in the logistics trade. When we break the whole port business into two, one is container, again, other is bulk, India really needs to look at specialized bulk handling equipments, where equipment designed for purpose will bring in a logistics efficiency. For example, grain. India needs to have its dedicated facility by creating hubs across the country, which can be used for exporting grain in a correct manner. When we look at the handling facility for a commodity like coal, most of the places where we are doing this handling either by door cranes needs to get mechanized in order to bring efficiency. On the seaside, the biggest key for all of us in the country is increasing the capacity to handle bigger and bigger vessels, which brings in its own economies of scale. Overall, this is a very, very exciting time in the country with the whole DFCCI route getting commissioned, which is going to bring in a huge play in the country where the truckers will be able to travel less and the balance of the distance is traveled by the train. A bit of imagination on part of people running the system to look at how do we encourage this diversion on an accelerated pace is a key to bring this change in the country with respect to long distance trucking getting reduced to relay trucking and the longer distances being traveled by train. Enough of capacity is being created for the next decade, which used correctly will lead to a drastic change in the way we have been running the logistics business in the country. I'm absolutely confident that two-pronged effect. One, the effect of railway network. Second, the effect of data utilization through unified logistics portal. Third is creation of infrastructure on the port side with respect to dedicated cargo handling facilities. All these three together are going to lead to a greater progress on this front in the country. Last but not the least, all the newer development industrialization is one opportunity for the country where ports can play an accelerated role by suitable usage of the land surrounding the ports, which can lead to a significant reduction in the logistics cost and the ease of handling of exports and imports. This is the brief, Raj and everyone, which I thought is of importance for everyone who is there in this call and the people who are running the show to look around for this opportunity to create the infrastructure for the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that was the most interesting point of view from your side. And I must say, one of the truly good mega ports of this country is Mundra. I've seen it grow over the last, I don't know, 20 years, but it's been fantastic. And I compliment all of you for that.
Thank you, Raj.
Going forward, I would just like to remind our audience that Mr. Vineet Kumar also holds charge as chairman of Haldia Port. With that small addition, may I please ask him to take up his submission?
Good morning, Raj. Good morning, my co-panelists and the audience. Thank you very much, first of all, for giving me this opportunity and inviting me to speak on this occasion. This interesting topic of mega ports and the brownfield development and also the port-led industrialization. See, ports are basically an important link in the entire supply chain, and we are an industry which supports the exporters and importers. It is primarily whatever is exported or imported. So we have to be in line with what is the vision of our country as regards exports as well as imports, and the port infrastructure has to be in sync with that requirement. Rather a little more than what we plan, because hard infrastructure takes time to come. So the country has a very ambitious target of exports. This year, I think there is already a target of $400 billion, and then there is Atmanirbhar Bharat also, where we are thinking and planning and doing to produce things in the country and export them. So ports become a very, very key I would say, the key element into this, if this entire story has to be successful, the port infrastructure has to be actually geared up to meet this. That is one part of it. Another part is that the costing part, the economy of exports depends upon the logistic cost, which is, as of now, we range around 14-15%, but the other countries it's around 7-8%. It's a big margin. So as far as competitiveness of the exports and imports is concerned, that is the second part of it. That is why also we need, mega ports or huge infrastructure so that we can enjoy the economies of scale, and the cost can come down, making the country's export and import most productive. So looking at the picture today, if you see the ports in the world over, unfortunately, we do not find a place. Maybe in the first 20 ports, none of our ports find a place in the first 20 ports, mega ports or bigger ports in the world. If you see the first 10, you will find first 5 or 6 of them are from China. Then you have some from Europe and some from, say, Singapore is there, and a couple of other things. So there is, in fact, a need for us to think big, think in terms of a mega port. When you call it as a mega port, it is not actually a port. It is basically an entire city. It is an entire ecosystem which has to be brought in. Now, it will not only be a port with a huge infrastructure. We are talking of key lines, so huge key line. Not only that, it has to have space for industry. There has to be enough space for supporting the industry in and around the port, so that automatically the logistic cost comes down, because you save either by way of you are getting your imports there or you are sending your exports, so you save that cost. Services, all kind of services are required. Financial services, you need banking, you need insurance, everything should be there. So it should be sort of one-stop solution. Marine services, all marine services. Some of the ports, mega ports in the world, if you take example of Singapore, but we understand that if 100 ships are standing at Singapore, I think half of them, or even more than half, are there for the services part of it. Then other ship repair, ship building, everything, skill development, the availability of trained manpower, everything has to come at one place. So my definition of mega port is something like that, an entire ecosystem which supports. And it is not that it is not there. All these big ports have this infrastructure. Somebody was mentioning that Antwerp has, it is one of the biggest, I have been there, and it's the biggest land area. And so the entire, we have to think in a bigger terms, not in terms of a port, but maybe a port city or a port area. One such port which is being developed as of now is Vadhavan port, which JNPT is spearheading that port. It is a mega port which is coming up with 22-meter, 23-meter draft and the whole area. So that is there. On eastern side, Paradip is a big port. As of now itself is quite big, and in fact it is another port which can be leveraged to be a mega port. It has all those ingredients. I have looked after the charge of Paradip port for quite some time. So it's another port, but we can have a greenfield, absolutely greenfield port also. So it is very important that we have, we think big, we scale our things, and we instead of having multiple ports here and there, one or two big big ticket projects and showcase projects are required. So once you have a showcase like China, sometime, I don't know, I think they started with Shanghai or Guzhou, which one? They started with one, they developed that model, and then they replicated that model at 3, 4, 5, 6 places. Something like that. It is need on the hour for our country also to have one such big port. And so already, as I told, Vadhavan is there going on in that direction, but maybe we will learn from that and come up with more such things in the future. What I feel is that a couple of things are required with whatever experience we have, that land is an issue. So there is need for a very easy and flexible approach towards land. Availability of land, rates of land, because land is a very big issue, and there has to be already, we are working on this. There has to be a policy for, like you have a policy for national highway. If you are making a national highway, you have, a lot of flexibility in acquiring land, in utilizing land. You can pay more, things like that. Something like that, when we are going for this kind of project, huge land bank will be required. And there will be land banks with some with central government, some with court, some with state government, some with municipal corporation. But if we want to make an infrastructure like this, we have to have a mandate, clear mandate. Okay, this much land is required, it has to be, it is there. And second is the part of approvals. Now, multiple approvals at multiple levels, slow down this kind of project. So it is important that we have a single window in true sense. When we say a single window, it is not that whosoever is developing, or because such, as I told you, when we talk of a mega port, it will not be just a port. It will be a port. There will be industry. There will be services. There will be ship repairing facilities. So many things. So everyone needs land for a different purpose, for a different rate, and for a different tenure. So all that flexibility has to come, and all of you need approval for electricity, light. So you should have plug and play infrastructure. So in my view, that is a basic requirement of a mega port, and already we are working in that direction. And probably this is the high time that we identify a couple of more projects, maybe in government sector or in private sector, and go for this kind of mega ports. Or mega port cities, I would say, so that you have that kind of big scale to leverage it for your exports, or or for imports, and to make a real impact in the world economy. What we are looking for. So that is as regards the mega port and industrialization part of it. Second is about the brownfield development. So brownfield development. As already fellow speaker has said, that as far as major ports or the government ports are concerned, we already have made a vision, which is called the Maritime India Vision 2030 by our ministry. And now we are further looking towards the Amrit vision, which is the vision for 2047, when our country will be completing 100 years of independence. So, so already this MIV 2030 is already in place, where all the projects have been identified, which projects in which port will be going on for, for PPP or for any other methods in the in times to come every year. In fact, it has a year timeline. I can very safely say that every couple of years, around 35 to 40 projects of PPP of different berths in different ports are coming, and that kind of brownfield development is going to take place. So the idea is to gradually go towards the landlord model for all the major ports, also inviting private sector participation, improving the efficiency, and bringing down the cost. Somebody mentioned about the framework, the condition, the contracts. So I must inform you that there are two big changes which have taken place. One is that we have come up with a new model concession agreement. So whatever have been the issues which we have come across, it's an evolving process. We gave concessions, we had certain problems, we resolved those problems, and now we have come up with a new model concession agreement, which gives us much more flexibility, which has addressed the issues which were there, and we feel that in the times to come, it will be quite, it will take care of the issues which have been raised by various investors. But as I said, it's an evolving process, it keeps on happening. But definitely, there is a clear understanding that yes, for making PPP projects of port sector, which are long projects of 30 years, 40 years, things like that, there has to be a flexible approach, because the business cycles happen, the things keep on changing. So that flexible approach is required. And another change which has taken place is the new Major Port Authority Act, which has come in. With that act, a lot of power has been delegated to the major ports. Major ports are the government ports, 12 major ports in the country. They have been delegated a lot of power, and the regulatory regime of the which was there for fixing the tariffs for the PPP operators that have been done away with, even for the ports and also for the PPP operators. Now, the PPP operators are free to fix their tariff as per the market conditions. So a lot of flexibility has been brought in. A lot of new this has been brought in. But somebody mentioned a very good point, which I will also like to reiterate, that we should have a master plan. While the individual ports have a master plan, but as he mentioned, is a very valid point that as a country we should have a master plan as to where and which port or which area we should have a port, because some areas have a natural advantage. We should take care of that. So that master plan is required, and I would add one more element to that master plan. That element is that see, ports is a service industry. We are servicing the exports and imports. So there has to, while we are developing a facility, if I'm developing an import facility and putting in money, and tomorrow there is a policy change and the import of that commodity is affected, in that case the entire investment, there are issues with that entire investment, because suppose you are importing coal and tomorrow because of certain issues the coal import is not there or it is discouraged, then the entire project goes into the problem. So it is important that we have not only a master plan as regards the various ports, both public and private, but also a very broad policy, clarity on the policy part of it, that in the next 25 years, which commodities we want to grow, which commodities we want to restrict, so that, when people are putting money, ultimately it is public money coming from banks, we put it in the right infrastructure, we put it in the right place. Like there are now talks of going more towards LNG, LPG, and hydrogen. So when we talk of a master plan, it is not only the master plan of where, how, which port, but yes, which commodities, which areas containerization is growing. So how much of containerization is happening, how to take care of that, what will be the growth. So a master plan of that sort is required. So our vision, which I told you, the Maritime Intervision 2030, to a great extent takes care of that. But I think an exercise involving the private port, as somebody suggested, will be something worth going ahead with it. Now, telling you about the Calcutta and the Haldia port. The Calcutta port is now called Shyama Prasad Mukherjee port, and it is both the port system of Calcutta and Haldia are under the management of the port. And at our places we handle containers mostly in Calcutta, and next 2-3 years at least 3-4 big projects are coming in Calcutta for container berths, mechanization and operations, long-term PPP. In Haldia, we are slowly going towards landlord model, and there will be bulk berths. So in next, I can say 2-3 years, at least 8-10 new projects are coming in Calcutta and Haldia. And we are a big player in the inland waterway scene, because our physical location is such that we are at the vertex of both the National Waterway 1, which is from Calcutta to Allahabad, and the National Waterway 2 from Calcutta to Assam. And we are at the vertex of it. So we are very eagerly and very aggressively going into transloading, transshipment, and inland waterways operation on the river. So that is another area which we are looking into this, and it's a very interesting area. That is the harnessing the power of our rivers, which we have not been doing. So if you take the example of Antwerp or Rotterdam, a lot of movement happens through rivers also, and it connects the hinterland very well. It's a green way of connecting. So that's what I wanted to say. Primarily, I would sum up that one is that we have to think big. We have to start with 1 or 2 big projects. When we call a mega port, let it be a mega city, mega port city, where everything is there, centered around that port, and let's have one going, and probably with the learnings, that is where we need to go from the league of having individual ports to the mega league of let's have at least 1 port in the first 10 or first 15 ports in the world. And the brownfield development, as somebody said, that we are already planned a lot of brownfield development, as all the ports are going through a landlord model in the next 5 to 10 years. And a lot of brownfield development is coming. The concerns, lot of concerns of the private players, PPP players have been addressed, and still there is a lot of flexibility still available with us, and we are evolving this process as to how both the public and private sector can come together and raise the level of this sector per se. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I think that was extremely optimistic and heartwarming submission from your side. I think overall the session has left at least me feeling extremely optimistic about the future of our whole port services in India, and I thank you for confirming my feeling. I think since we are virtual, can I just ask everybody to acknowledge our speakers with a nod of their heads or a small round of applause. I thank everybody. I now hand over to Padma if she'd like to take any questions from our audience or anything else. It just remains for me to once again thank our panelists, particularly for taking so much time on a working day, and for Koen for waking up so early because of the time difference. And once again to the audience for joining us. Thank you very much. Padma, over to you, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you, panelists and Mr. Raj Khalid, for an excellent session. It was really interesting and wonderful to have all of you. There are quite a few questions that we would like, and some of the questions have already been answered by Mr. Koen. So there is a question on, though there have been many MOUs signed in the Maritime Summit 2020, why are they not being materialized? Why have they not materialized? And another question is about, neither government nor major ports are seriously looking at having separate berths for coastal vessels. Currently, coastal vessels have to go through the same documentation or procedures as foreign going vessels, which is a unnecessary process. What are the thoughts on this important issue to assist developing coastal shipping further? This is from Captain Mazumdar.
You want me to answer this?
Yes, please. Sir. I think you're the most qualified person to take this on.
Okay, so item number 1, somebody mentioned that why the MOUs signed in MIB are not getting implemented. No, that is, I would say, beg to differ here, that yes, a lot of MOUs are getting implemented. I can say from my example, we did an MOU with H Energy for an LNG facility in Guwahati. It is in progress. So a lot of MOUs which we signed are already in progress. And as you understand, an MOU is a memorandum of understanding. You build on the projects then, and then it takes for then you take it forward. So they are in various stages of implementation. So I would say that it's not that they are not getting implemented. A lot of them are getting implemented, and others are in the various stages of discussion and deliberation and finalization of the project. An MOU is just an understanding to go forward in that direction. It has to take a shape, become a project, and then it is implemented. So some of them are already taken, come to this stage where they are, in the project form. Some are already in implementation stage, and some are still developing, because some of them are related to very, technology or some very new areas which still need a little more exploration. Now, as regards coastal berths, I would say that most of the ports have coastal berths. Some ports do not have it. They are in the process of having coastal berths. Now, as regards the documentation part of it, there is an issue there, which I understand that at some places the documentation for coastal vessels is also a little more, which we are already in the process of resolving. Along with customs, I would say there are certain issues with customs also. I would say that the problem is not with the pure coastal vessel. The problem comes when a vessel comes with both coastal and the exim cargo. In that case, there are certain custom formalities which are to be done to identify as to which cargo is which. But definitely the point is well taken. That the simplification of coastal cargo procedure is required further. We'll definitely have a look at it.
Some of it may be coming from Bangladesh, or is that one of the reasons why this is there?
No. Bangladesh comes under it is under coastal agreement. So, and coastal, we have a separate agreement with Bangladesh. It is called Indo-Bangla Protocol route. So we have a separate agreement, and I don't think there is any issue specifically with Bangladesh.
Okay.
So I don't think there's any issue. We treat them as differently. They are either coastal, whether it is coming from any port in India or any port in Bangladesh, we treat them in the same manner.
Okay. There's one more question on transforming to megaports. How is automation or AI going to play its part in the process?
I think maybe there are other people who can answer it, but just
I think Koon can answer it better. Koon is an expert on that.
But before we go there, I just want to say one thing. One of the goals also in Antwerp port is to generate employment and hold the employment that we already have. So I think it's a delicate balance between retaining employment and using automation for the sake of efficiency. Over to Koon.
And security as well, Arash.
Yeah.
So security automation, if we look to the project PSA, for example, did the last year is by a system called Camco systems, whereby people under the crane are replaced by a camera system to increase as well the safety of the workers at the quay side. So we don't need people anymore to register the container movements under the crane. It's done by automatic camera systems of Camco. So that's an important thing. Employment as well, because resources are very important. I had a question why small SMEs can help the community. Regarding the pandemic, we had a big challenge as well. We need to bear, unfortunately, worldwide. A small company called Rombit invented a smart watch, a smart device you can put on to be able to control distance between people and work safely within this pandemic. And that's the way how we stayed 100% operationally during this pandemic. So as a port as well, you need to create a resilient environment by looking and working together with your community within the port. One thing I want to add is, and it may be strange, but we have a scholarship program. You can get scholarships. Certainly for India, we work together with the Flemish government, so we can give scholarships. And may I invite you on this way, in our DNA, sharing knowledge, sharing expertise, may I invite you to take the advantage of those scholarships and visit Port of Antwerp once, because I think you need to see how huge and how well organized we are. I can tell it via the video conf, but the most important thing is to see it in life. So we have scholarship programs. Please use them. And come and visit us. Unfortunately, COVID is still messing around. But afterwards, please use this and visit Port of Antwerp. There was a question, a very interesting question as well. Sharing in our DNA, sharing knowledge, sharing expertise. We do it as well with our competitors. We have the chain port platform, for example, where we work together with Port of Hamburg, where we work with Port of Rotterdam. Why? Because of security, because of innovation, sustainability. We can't do it alone. And merging, getting together and share the knowledge, share the expertise between ports is a very important one. You can compare it a little bit to how big liners are forcing their forces together to be even more competitive. We as well organize platforms and work together with Port of Los Angeles, Port of Rotterdam, Port of Montreal, Hamburg, Barcelona, to speak about the challenges we have and how to cope these challenges on innovation, sustainability, safety and security. As you know or not, the latest news yesterday evening, even the liner MSC is taking very, not strange, but very correct conditions right now. They stopped working with South of America because of, the drug smuggling problems we have. So in their and it's the brand of MSC what's very important for them, and they don't want to be a shipping line who is transporting, unfortunately, as well, containers with some white powder and drugs and narcotics. And so even on that way, we work together with Port of Singapore, we work together with Port of Rotterdam to tackle that issue, because it's a very important and challenging issue in the big ports around Port of Antwerp and in Port of Antwerp as well. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, sir. There's one more question on why land matters, land issues matter when it comes to major ports. Most of land areas are underutilized in major port areas.
I think it's back to
Mr. Vineet.
yes, it's the best place to.
See, when I mentioned land matters, I didn't mean that the kind of land which is being talked about. When we talk of the mega port, we talk of a city. We talk of maybe thousands of hectares kind of land. So major ports do have land, and it is not that it is just like that. Major ports are allotting those lands to various industries which are port based, and land is an asset. It has to be given, especially the port near the land near the port has to be given only to the industries which are port based, because they have an inherent advantage. The port land is not just for the purpose of giving it to anybody, but it has a twin purpose of expanding the cargo of the port also. So I don't think that all the ports have major chunks of land lying just like that, where we can immediately go for a mega port. When I said that land is an issue, it is an issue if you want to make a, say, port city, entire port city with everything which I said is required, large industrial houses, and then the maritime services and everything. It will require thousands of hectares of land. For that, there are issues where there will be multiple holdings. Some land will be held by the port, some by the state government, some by the other central government authorities. So there you have to have a common authority for getting that land into one fold. So that is the consolidation of land, and the pricing of land is an issue. That is what I mean.
Okay, two more questions. What is your opinion on the frequent situation of northwestern issues being faced in Haldia? In spite of all these issues, are the long entry route, is it still a good investment made by India, or should we take it as a learning point for future infrastructure projects?
What was the last part of it?
Yeah. What is your opinion on the frequent situation and northwestern issues being faced by Haldia? In spite of these issues and the long entry route, is it still a good investment made by India, or should we take it as a learning point for future infrastructure projects?
See, northwestern is not that big an issue. A northwestern, it's like a cyclone which comes. The cyclone comes. Eastern coast of India is prone to cyclone. Every year there are 3 to 4 cyclones. So it comes not only to Haldia, it comes to Paradip, it comes to Vizag, it comes to every port. So that is not an issue. As far as your point that with a long channel, I would say that Calcutta port has the longest channel in the country. It is 232 kilometers. Haldia has a channel of 70 kilometers. And Haldia port, as on date, last year handled 45 million ton of cargo, and it is catering to the entire eastern and northeastern part of the India, including Bhutan and Nepal. So it is a very well-made investment. That is the question. Very well-made investment, and let me tell you that we have gone for certain PPP projects, and we have got very good response from even now from the private players. it's a very, very good investment, and it's a very, nicely made port for handling the cargo, meeting the requirement of that particular mineral.
Yeah, there was a question about school children earlier being allowed to visit ports, and now after COVID, whether this can be revived for them to understand better.
Yeah.
Of course, after COVID, it can be revived. So there is no issue.
Yeah. I think it's a very important one as well. So young potentials, very important as well for the community and port environments. What we do in Antwerp, unfortunately, COVID-19 is messing around, but we implement some small information stands within the center of Port of Antwerp, excuse me, whereby people can visit and get to know what important things the Port of Antwerp is doing, because sometimes there are a lot of misunderstandings by implementing new companies. Is it sustainable? Is it eco-friendly? And so on. So people can come to those shops, buy information books, books of the Port of Antwerp, historical books of Port of Antwerp, how Port of Antwerp moved from the old city center, what's now more an urbanization part of Antwerp towards the new Port of Antwerp, and what's the importance of the Port of Antwerp within Belgium. It's one of the biggest economic drivers, and as well a very important 80 kilometers together with Port of Zeebrugge, 80 kilometers land inwards. So we are in the proximity of all the big players within Europe. So, and that's why we invite as well. And that's why we share as well our knowledge via scholarship programs and so on. So I think it's a very important thing. The Young Potentials, we organize as well for India every year a Young Potential program whereby young potentials of India are coming to Port of Antwerp, together with the Indian Institute of Foreign Trade as well. They will visit as well with 100 people, MBA students. They come to Port of Antwerp to share the knowledge and to share our experience as well. So for us, a big important point as well, because they are the future of India.
Absolutely, sir. So with this, we can bring the session to a close. Thank you very much, panelists, for a wonderful session. Thank you, all of you, for the audience too, for these engaging questions.